Good to see you here today. I'll be seeing you again on April 18th when you come before my Homeland Security Committee for another budget hearing. So we'll look forward to that. So I have I'll have a majority of my questions will be reserved for when I see you later in April. But a few questions for you. One relating, or some related to my home state in Michigan. You know, ice breaking in the Great Lakes is not just for Michigan's economy incredibly important, but also for the entire country. Ice breaking capacity in the Great Lakes supports more than 90 million tons of cargo annually, and unfortunately, inadequate ice breaking poses a risk to our economic recovery. I was pleased to see in the budget there's a request for $55 million for long lead time materials and programmatic support, excuse me, for acquisition of a second heavy Great Lakes icebreaker. So, Secretary Mayorkas, my question for you is, one, first off, may I have your commitment to work with me and the committee to swiftly utilize this funding to get a second heavy icebreaker on the lakes, as well as to secure the additional funding to support the Great Lakes icebreaking fleet?
Most certainly, Senator, I do. I commit to working with you. These icebreakers are so vitally important, not only, of course, in the Great Lakes region, but in the Arctic as well, and that is why our fiscal year 2024 budget also provides for funding for a commercially available icebreaker. Our challenges in the Arctic are extraordinary as the People's Republic of China and Russia seek to expand their footprint there.
Great. Well, thank you. One of my own priorities as a senator, one of my top priorities, I should say, is always protecting the Great Lakes, in addition to having commerce move safely and efficiently across the waters. I worked with the Coast Guard and the Department in 2018 to establish the Great Lakes Center of Expertise for Oil Spill Preparedness and Response, which is in Michigan, and something that we're very proud that that's located in our state. The center is intentionally located not far from a major oil pipeline, which, if ruptured, could affect the drinking water for literally tens of millions of people. And I'm grateful to the Coast Guard for establishing the center, and I'll keep working to grow its resources and its capacity to serve the Great Lakes. So, Secretary Mayorkas, may I have your commitment to work with me and this committee to support the Coast Guard's work in freshwater, which matters so much to us in the Great Lakes region?
Most certainly, Senator.
Thank you. Anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. Reached their highest level last year since 1979, according to the Anti-Defamation League, and taken together with other recent events such as bomb threats against historically black colleges and universities and attacks against Asian Americans, it's clear that racial, ethnic, and religious groups are facing an increasing threat. One of the federal government's primary ways to help communities protect themselves is through the Nonprofit Security Grant Program, which provides funding to houses of worship and other nonprofits to protect against these often domestic terrorist attacks. Secretary Mayorkas, I'm pleased to see the President requested $360 million for this program. I've advocated for the same. Could you please explain why this investment is so critical given today's complex threat environment in our country?
Senator, the terrorism threat in our country has evolved over the past 20 years since the department was first created. We were initially, of course, in light of the tragedy and devastation of 9/11, focused on the foreign terrorists who sought to enter our country and do us grave harm. That evolved over the years, and during the Obama-Biden administration, during those years, the threat that we faced most prominently, though its prior iterations certainly didn't disappear, was the threat of the homegrown violent extremist, the individual already resident in the United States, radicalized to violence by a foreign terrorist ideology who sought to do us harm. Now, the greatest terrorism-related threat that we face, while these other iterations, prior iterations, haven't disappeared, is the threat of domestic violent extremism. Individuals radicalized to violence by an ideology of hate, false narratives, anti-government sentiments, personal grievances, other narratives spread on online platforms through social media. We see an increasing amount of violence by reason of ideologies of hate. And the Nonprofit Security Grant Program allows us to equip and empower local communities, places of worship, schools that are nonprofit organizations, that are target-rich and resource-poor to build their security. While we partner with them, they also have to have inherent in their capabilities the power and strength to protect themselves. And that is why that program is so vitally important.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that continued support because it is vitally important. As we talk about border security, I always have to remind my colleagues, being from the state of Michigan, we have a northern border as well as a southern border. And as trade and travel continues to return to pre-pandemic levels, it's critical that the CBP has the personnel necessary to support operations at our ports of entry, including the northern border. So amid increasing retirement eligibility for numerous dedicated CBP officers, how are you ensuring that the northern border has the resources and the personnel it needs, especially as we near the opening of the Gordie Howe International Bridge, which will become one of the busiest border crossings in all of North America? In fact, we have a couple of the top 5 in Michigan in terms of the volume of trade that goes across our border.
Senator, the funding that we have received in fiscal year 2023, thanks to the appropriation of Congress, funds not only our Border Patrol agents for our border security on the south and the north, but also our Office of Field Operations officers that man the ports of entry that I know are so important to the states that border with Canada. And so in our fiscal year 2024 budget, we are seeking enhanced personnel precisely for that reason.
Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Collins.